So we sent our son off to college, and he came home with schizophrenia.
Now our family's searching for the cure.
But in the meantime, this is how we're functioning.
I want to talk about what can happen. Father, mother.
Welcome back, everyone, to Functioning. Today's podcast is brought to you by GTS, the End User Experts, and One Gun Entertainment. And speaking of One Gun, we are coming to you from the beach today. One Gun has been out here in Myrtle Beach channeling the energy of Bob Marley and his healing music. So we're super excited to be here. And just in case you're wondering, why is your background looking a little different? It's because we are at the beach. So welcome back, honey babe. How you doing?
That's right. How you doing, Lovey? That's right. We are in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I am enjoying every bit of the ocean and the humidity as well, as long as I can stand it. So loving it out here. Just love it.
And you were going to tell them a little bit about the 1% of the population, and really starting this conversation around culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's commonly known that, schizophrenia impacts 1% of the population equally, regardless of culture or class. And I also found out that approximately 1.2% of Americans, right around 3.2 million, have the disorder. So I'm assuming that's undiagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
So just like food, music, and geographical region, culture impacts how we approach schizophrenia all the time.
Yeah, and I can certainly attest to that. As most of you know, I am biracial, where I'm half African American and half English with a touch of German. And really, I've spent most of my life kind of in that ringside seat between, African American culture and English culture. I always say it's between sweet potato pie and pumpkin pie. And then for Thanksgiving, it's collard greens and green bean casserole. So really understanding, just like food, there's that aspect of culture that plays into everything, including that of mental health and schizophrenia. And that's why I was so excited when I was watching this young man. I was sitting actually in bed as I was watching a story about this young man and the work that he's doing around mental health. And specifically, he called out that some of his work is really targeting that stereotyping right within his culture. And I was just so proud of this young man. I kind of sprung to my feet and I started looking him up right away. He's done great work. He's one of our mental health equalizers. And so I wanted to invite to the program today Rick Yang. Thanks for coming, Rick.
Hi everyone.
How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Rick, tell us about the work that you're doing. So let me brag on Rick for a second. The piece that I saw is that he just won an award, a high school award for his work on Student Voice and Mental Health Award, right? I think that was the award. And again, specifically around mental health and youth. Do you want to speak to that award just a little bit for us?
Yeah, of course. So the award that I won was the JED Foundation's 2024 High School Student Voice of Mental Health Award. So each year they give one scholarship to an undergraduate student and one to a high school student. I think this is like the third year they've done it for high school students. They've done it a little longer for undergraduates. But I was this year's high school's award winner. And they basically sought to, identify someone who has worked in their community to promote youth mental health, and also worked to promote suicide prevention. And so I've done some work in that realm related to advocacy and some research, both in my community, in my school district, at the county level, state level, a little bit at the national level. So, yeah.
That's amazing. So you've graduated, right?
Yeah, I just graduated a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, so I don't want to say you're working through your high school year or your senior year because you've graduated, and Rick will begin his next phase of studies at Harvard University in the fall. I mean, I just have to look at you and be amazed at that. First of all, a lot of people aren't even getting to college these days or bypassing college. So what do you plan on studying in school?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one that my parents ask me a ton. But to be honest, um, I I want to say like psychology, in addition to perhaps like statistics or like applied math, but definitely something that I can utilize to continue my pursuits in mental health with, in addition to some of like the more STEM side of things that I've always really enjoyed.
Mm. Oh, well,
Nice.
we actually just finished a podcast where we talked about the code, and Honey Babe will tell you in a minute what the code means, but basically how science is really taking a look at mental health, and how it happens through gene expression. So, as far as I'm concerned, you're probably going to be one of my heroes in finding a cure for all of this stuff. If you're smart enough to get into Harvard. No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure at all. No,
Just
not
to
at all.
ask. It's a request. No problem. Yeah. So can you tell us what inspired this work for you? Is it, for community building? Was it personal?
Yeah. So freshman year, I guess like long story short, I had a friend, and we would FaceTime every night, and this was during like remote learning, right when like kind of COVID was like reaching close to its climax and its peak. And she was depressed, and essentially she once told me that she wanted to seek help for her mental health, but her parents wouldn't let her, for fear of, I guess, like community shame and like stigma related concerns. Um, and it took like a few months, I would say like 3, 4, 5 months, until her parents finally let her go seek help. And at the time, it was through telemedicine, because things were remote back then. Um, and she was eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Um, and I think after that experience, we've had some conversations regarding the cultural barriers that I think she faced toward to seeking help. And I mean, now she's doing great. She's thriving now. But I think it was definitely that experience that kind of showed me that mental health is definitely a cultural concern, and it has various societal factors affecting it, and cultural aspects to it, more than just like, I guess, the biological psychiatric side of things. And so um, after that experience, I kind of just got propelled into the space of like mental health advocacy, not only to help those like my friend, but also people in communities everywhere and anywhere else, frankly.
Wow.
That's amazing. Now, outside of talking about our codes, which we talked earlier about our genetics and our DNA, and how some of that of who we are is based on our parents, our ancestry, things like that. And this is our pursuit in mental health, and also talking about schizophrenia across the cultural board of society. So in asking that, I wanted to know if how your family's reacted to you working in mental health, and do you have any family members working with you? Are any family members a part of your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say like at first, when I started engaging in some of my early days, like mental health related activities, or like working with my school's mental wellness club, my parents were kind of just like a little bit confused. They're like, hey, like, why don't you go like study like math or something, instead of working towards mental health related projects. But I think over time, as a result of like the work I've done and the passion I've shown through the activities that I've partaken in, they've kind of realized that like, hey, like I'm really passionate about this kind of stuff, and they've started to kind of embrace the work that I do. And right now, none of my family members are directly a part of my team, but I've had to like travel the country a couple times to like speak at conferences, and my father has like taken me to these places, and so he definitely supports the work I've done, and he's driven me to a lot of like events and stuff, just so I could like watch some sort of presentation or something along those lines.
Okay,
All
I've got a
right.
feeling you're going to be getting interviewed and talked to quite a bit in the future here, and like Lovey said, hopefully you will be on the cusp of finding some type of future help, or future discoveries that can help. I know they're doing things with all kind of, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. They're finding
Yeah.
medications and items that can help with those type of disorders. But I wanted to just say that it's pretty tricky in that our podcast is designed to be an open forum, and we try to respect the privacy of families and avoid all of the stereotyping, which is how we came upon this cultural pursuit of mental health. Now, without revealing more than you're comfortable with, I know you specifically speak to mental health. Have you ever had any experience with schizophrenia? Have you seen it? Have you had any people that talk about it, and you've been in that kind of forum as well?
Yeah, so I think specifically in my community, I haven't really gotten much experience talking about schizophrenia. I think a lot of the work I've done has mainly centered around, I guess, like more common like mental health problems among students in my area, which happens to be like just tons of like stress for like depression, anxiety.
Yeah, and if I can jump in here, I just want to say, listening to your story, what a hero you are, young man. I'm not joking. When you think about
Thank
how
you.
many, what a friend you were to your friend, to be that ear that she could confidently tell you, hey, this is what I'm going through here. And that, a lot of people do run away, especially if you don't have those experiences in your family, that you stood there in her pain, and really, helped her get the help that she needed. And boy, that's, really heroic work, right? And so, you may know, I don't know how much of our podcast you've listened to, but, schizophrenia kind of meanders through my family code. And, many of the sick people, they can't advocate for themselves, right? And then some of the family members, like her family, are kind of hiding in the shame in these closets, right? And it really does take heroes like you to be able to burst through those stigmas and say, hey, come on, let's get you some help, or just to encourage her to get help. So I'm trying not to get emotional, but I really honor your work here, around that. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate
yeah,
that.
she does get emotional when there's a potential of advocacy, cures. We do get excited about that. Now, I wanted to just throw some questions at you. I know you're into this now, but try to separate yourself a little bit from it. And this is not regarding your family, but just in general. And this is one of my cultural questions. In your frame of mind, what do you think about mental health when they say that?
Yeah, I think that like I've always kind of said that like mental health is just as important as physical health. So just as someone would take their time to promote their overall physical health, people should be focusing on investing in their mental health as well. I think mental health is equally, if not more important than physical well-being, and a lot of things that you can do to improve your physical health, whether it's like getting good exercise or having a good diet or getting enough sleep, can also benefit your mental well-being. And ultimately, a good mental health will be able to affect positively how you think, how you feel about things that happen in your life, and how you act based on those events. And it'll help you to better handle your stress and relate to other people in interactions, and ultimately make good decisions and choices in your life. And I think mental health it's important at every stage of your life, from early childhood days all the way to adulthood and beyond. And I think that access to proper mental health care and comprehensive support systems, as well as just basic support from your family and friends, is essential for those who are experiencing challenges surrounding mental health, whether it's stigma or other barriers to care.
Yeah.
And just thinking about our society, mental health has to be a challenge in general, right? What we have to deal with in this world and today. You can only imagine what people are coming across and what they're feeling and how it swells up in them. You have no idea, and then all of a sudden it just happens to someone, and now that person is, I think they would have the goal to try to find out, well, how did this happen? I don't know if it's speaking with a doctor or speaking with a parent or family member, but it's always that, now there's a mental health crisis, but people have to understand where it came from.
Hmm.
So, not related to your family, but just in general, I know if it's off the beaten path of your desire and goals, but what do you think when someone says to you schizophrenia? When you hear that word, what do you think?
Yeah. So I went over this with like a local researcher who does work relating to schizophrenia, and basically, um, the main takeaway from that conversation for me was essentially that schizophrenia is a severe mental health disorder that um, affects a person's ability to, like, I guess, feel and how they think and behave in the real world. And sometimes they like are perceived to, I guess, like have lost touch with reality and could have like hallucinations. And what he was telling me was essentially that like there are various um, factors that could cause schizophrenia, including like your family history, various biological factors like genetics, and also environmental factors. But while there's no set cure, I believe, for schizophrenia, there are various ways to manage um, the disorder, whether it's medication, psychotherapy, other services that are commonly offered.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, you
right.
nailed it. I tell you, one thing that's so great about the youth today, and we talk about a lot of things generationally, because as I said, it meanders through my code. And one of the things that, my younger nieces and nephews and people of your age group, you guys just have such a great, I think, comfort in mental health and how to talk about mental health. And it's really the generational, that where the stigma kind of still tends to hang on a bit. But interestingly, when I think about you guys caring for your health, and I like what you said about, it starts with physical health. And one of the things that I am so passionate for my young people is get outside and play. You just you don't go outside and play enough, right? And that is, everybody that knows me knows I like to run in mountains. I like to play outside in nature a lot, and I think when you were talking about your friend and having it during that COVID time where you're in the house and you're on your technology and you're just, those would be the times that, yeah, mental health just becomes a big challenge, right? When you're not getting that physical movement, you're not outside and you're not socializing. I can't imagine what that was like for you. Meanwhile, Honey Babe and I were running around trying to find open tennis courts all around the city because
For our mental health,
for our
yes,
mental
yes.
health. Yeah, that's awesome. So, yeah, did you have any other questions for Rick?
Oh yeah, yeah. I did want to ask, Rick, as far as do you know if there's any? I know, and it's a broad spectrum, but typical treatments of psychosis or mental health, and I really wanted to find out if there's a specific type of treatment within the Asian culture that you're aware of. Is there anything that stands out, like this is the first thing they do, this is the second thing people do?
Yeah. Yeah. And how does that stereotyping, I always think that's an interesting, we were just talking about this, culturally, it's like you don't want to stereotype, and yet, culture plays a role in things. And so we were just curious because unfortunately I don't have any folks that I can talk to. So that's why I was excited to have you on the podcast. How has your culture played a role in some of the work that you've done in mental health?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that um, coming from like a Chinese American culture, there is this model minority myth in the United States, where we're kind of just expected to be, a problem-free minority. So like discussions surrounding mental health are often stigmatized and downplayed, and in my community, it's often an afterthought. And like ultimately, when it comes to like even back in mainland China, where my parents are from, regarding mental health treatment, I think like before um, treatment, there are various like just societal barriers that prevent students from seeking help. they're just afraid that they're just going to let down their friends, their peers, their teachers, family, community. And so I'm not like too sure of the specific like step 1, step 2 in terms of mental health treatment for psychosis, for example, in my culture. But I do know that there's definitely differences in like Western and Eastern medicine. So I probably would assume that back in China, they have some sort of like herbal medicine or maybe like even acupuncture for just like healing the mind.
Well, I'm glad that you said that. It sounds like shame is really kind of the underlying stigma, right? Which is don't ask for help because it'll bring shame upon the family, where, I think interestingly in African American culture, and again, not stereotyping everybody, but, in our culture, really, we've been taught, to pray a lot, go to church, you know what I mean? Find Jesus and he'll help. And I am a believer of that. And I think sometimes you need more than Jesus. You know what I mean? Sometimes you might, you might, Jesus, we won't even get into that, but, sometimes you just need more, right? And so, that's been one of the challenges, I think, in our community. Whereas, interestingly, on my German kind of English side, they kind of have a tendency to go, kind of buck up here, get a job, get a hold of yourself and stop being ridiculous is really their philosophy around some of this stuff. And, that's been their strategy. So it is, again, culture plays a role in how these things, play out.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened with your friend? Did she get traditional Western medication, or did she go with, I guess, was she Asian? Let's start there. Yeah, you said she was, right? Yeah.
She was Chinese
So
American.
yeah. So how did that work out? Is she taking traditional meds now, or?
Yeah. So I don't think she basically received like Western medicine side of things. So just like I think not too sure, but probably like cognitive behavioral therapy, and some meds as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And is she stable now, or is she?
Yeah.
Oh, good. You guys are still connected, or?
Yeah. We're still tight now.
Oh,
Oh,
love that.
good.
That's
Good.
awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to go back to what you were talking about, Lovey. The religious aspect of it. Does that play a part into your culture as well, Rick?
Yeah, I think for like in terms of Asian American culture, like certainly in general. For me specifically, I'm not religious, so I can't like speak to that to a great extent. But I know of like I have various friends, Asian American friends, who are religious and who have talked to me about how that plays a role in terms of like healing and their well-being and overall mental health.
Mm, okay. Well, overall, I just wanted to ask you, as we're just about to wrap up here. We won't keep you much longer, but what remind us of what are your goals? What are your hopes and dreams for you, for society, for the world, for your culture? Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think personal goals wise, I think that mental health is one of the greatest um, thieves of human potential in the world, and I think that in the future, I would definitely like to um, combine the power of research, but also advocacy and policy, harnessing both of those sides, and just combining them in a way that can help me to solve some of the issues in the world regarding mental health. Um, and I think in terms of like society and like mental health in the future, I envision hopefully a world in which, um, obviously one, conversations surrounding mental health are destigmatized, but also two, a world in which youth are kind of placed at the forefront of discussions concerning their well-being, because there's always a lot of talk about like, oh, youth mental health, and like Surgeon General declared like a youth mental health crisis in like 2021. But I think that ultimately, when it comes to approaching the youth mental health crisis, one of the most important steps is to incorporate incorporate youth voice and youth input into decision-making processes, and then actually acting upon that input instead of just kind of pretending like you're using that input, which is like essentially tokenism. But yeah, those 2 points for sure.
Yeah, I think, and you said a key word, advocacy. It can be the difference between having a home and being homeless. I mean, it's just that flick of a switch that, and it's that stigma of, when you think mental health or, even schizophrenia, sometimes people will automatically think violence, where people with mental health disorders, and when they're in that situation, are more than likely to be harmed than a lot of times harm someone. I mean, it's not always like that, but especially with schizophrenia, where, they seem to, it's just the way they are. If you see someone out and about and they're talking to themselves, or they're walking around in circles or something like that, it is kind of off-putting to be around someone like that. And like me and my wife, we never know if, like, hey, should we say something to this person? Should we help them? You don't know what you're getting involved with. So it's so great. And when you said the youths of America taking the forefront, well, you have to, because
this
who knows how
yours.
long I'll be here, and
Yeah.
after you, and so on and so forth. So giving that information and passing it down the line is so important. And it's not everybody can take a stance. Not everybody votes. So it's that simple, that you are taking that forefront. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be a huge weight on your shoulder, but you look strong, you look sturdy, you look like you can handle it.
Like I said, he's definitely a hero. And I like what you were
Yes.
saying about, us really receiving your input. Interestingly, the youth in my life has helped guide this conversation. We have a lot of our family members who have gone into social work, and they're working in the field, but so they actually come back and educate us and help us, with this burden that's been placed on our family. So it's so the work that you're doing, I agree that, especially, and I can see where sometimes culture plays a role in that too, where we're thinking that we should be the authority on something because we're older, and frankly, no, you young people, can really lead and guide us, because frankly, you have a lot more information with the human genome that was just coded out. I mean, you've got, information at your fingertips that are really, really exciting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's a great way to conclude our podcast today. And for all our listeners, just keep in mind that we're not doctors. We're just having an open forum discussion with friends, families, and people like Rick Yang, who are just doing and on their way to doing amazing things. And remember, if you need psychiatric care, please contact and consult with your healthcare professionals. And always remember to like, subscribe, and share Functioning, and even leave a comment. Leave a comment about Rick today. You may want to speak to Rick, as we reached out to him as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Rick, would you want to leave them with any final thoughts or any final advice based on the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately, taking care of your mental health is, remember that it's a sign of strength and not a sign of weakness. And every step you take towards building your mental health is just another step that you would take normally towards building a healthier version of yourself.
That is
That's awesome.
lovely. Man, I couldn't have said that better yourself. This kid, he's brilliant. Oh my God, I cannot believe it. I'm so grateful to be sharing this earth with you. Okay, good. Well, I think we're good. So everybody's going to like, subscribe. Rick, do you have a channel that you want to call out for people if they want to reach you? Or
Well, I guess my Instagram is _Rick_Yang.
Okay, good. So we'll follow you there, and we're looking forward. Like Honey Babe said, we see a lot more coming from you. We're going to keep an eye on you for the future.
Oh, yeah. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a good one. And guys,
Take
remember,
care.
this is how we're functioning.